One mustache distance away from your face.
Totally
normal.
One mustache. I like that.
That's how I live my life.
Gonna rest it on the mic. If there's contact, you know it's good. Oh, okay.
I trimmed mine pretty short, so I feel like the mic's going up my nose when I'm that far away.
Just up your nostril.
Your nose hair's not touching.
Man.
Not close enough.
You got to trim them too, though.
Yeah.
If you got nostril hairs touching, you got to do some maintenance.
Man, I've been pulling those out once in a while lately, and man, it does not feel good. Just tear me up, and I sneeze a whole bunch.
I don't know how women, I don't know how in the world they do all the hair removal, like pulling them out, dude.
Yeah, not good.
I don't know. That doesn't seem fun to me, but. What's up, everybody? I'm Mitch. This is the Fit4Moto Academy podcast. I'm joined today by my co-host, Rick. How you doing, Rick?
I'm doing well.
Awesome, buddy. This is for all things moto, man. We talk about everything as it relates to motocross to make you a safer, faster rider. And also because we just love it so much. So if you're into that kind of thing, stay tuned. This is going to be episode 3, where we talk about coaching, good and bad coaches, what to look for, and how to avoid the bad ones if you're looking to get some coaching on your side. So with all that being said, hang tight. We're going to get into it. And here we are, episode 3.
Episode 3.
I have a co-host.
How's that feel?
This is different. In my videos, I never have a co-host. Well, I should say it's pretty rare I have a co-host or anyone else in the videos. It's usually just people staring at me from afar because they're confused on why I have a camera.
There was a stretch that you had a twin that showed up in your videos. What happened to him?
He's still around. He just he makes special appearances, you know. Yeah.
He's busy working.
Yeah, busy working. Yeah, man. So episode 3. So my idea for this one was just chat about coaching. So for those of you that don't know, Rick has joined me a lot on some of the schools that we've done. He's kind of seen a bunch of the good and the bad from the schools, and I think there's probably some takeaways in that as far as like what makes a good coach, what makes a bad coach, that kind of stuff. So I figured that we would just talk about that and kind of see where it takes us.
It sounds good.
Let's do it, buddy. So coaching. So, I mean, I think personally, and I was actually having this discussion with somebody the other day at the track. They came to me for coaching, and of course I'm 100% on board with that. I love doing it. And I was explaining to him, I said that there's times where even like I want to get coaching from someone who's better than me. And he was actually really surprised by that. And he's like, well, you're an expert level rider. Why would you need the coaching? Meanwhile, I may be expert given that context, but there's definitely people out there that will smoke me on the track. So absolutely, I can benefit from getting some coaching. And that it seemed like it really kind of spurred this thought process in his head, because he was like, well, if Mitch is getting coaching, right, then I definitely probably should get some coaching. And I was surprised that he was surprised, if that makes sense. So I kind of expected it more to be like, you know, every level gets coaching, and he was more like, well, I thought when you get to that level, you don't need it anymore to kind of get rid of bad habits. Does that make sense? Absolutely.
And it's not just with moto. Doesn't matter what you're doing in life. There's always somebody who does it better, and there's always somebody you can learn something from. So
yeah.
Coaching at all levels is great. Yeah,
absolutely, man. I totally agree. So with that being said, I think as far as coaching goes, you know, probably safe to say whatever level you're at, I think beginner, intermediate, pro, whatever, I think you can get some coaching on some level. I mean, if you look at like Ryan Dungey or any of those dudes, one of the big names in the coaching world is Alden Baker, right? And I don't think that, at least I've never seen a video where that dude has ever even ridden a dirt bike. So, and he's coaching, now granted it may be a fitness type coaching thing, but I still feel like he's coaching the absolute top dudes in the world. He's coaching the absolute top dudes in the world about, you know, well, in this corner you were slower, in this corner, or whatever he teaches them. And this is a guy that has never, to my knowledge, doesn't ride dirt bikes, and even if he does, certainly doesn't ride at that level, right? So I would say, as it relates to coaching, you know, just because you're a super fast guy also is not going to translate into your ability to coach people at a level below you. You know what I mean? I think coaching might be there's more to it than that.
Absolutely, and there's more to coaching than seat position and you just being on the bike. There's the fitness aspect and a whole lot more that goes with it, bumping up your endurance so you can actually ride on the bike comfortably and last a whole bunch longer.
Yeah, totally. I'll just get you to kind of bring it a little closer. Yeah, because you're kind of doing. Yeah. So, yeah, I agree. There is more to coaching than that, and I guess my point is just that you don't have to be the world's most elite rider to coach people either, right? Now that kind of brings us into what makes a good coach, what makes a bad coach, and let's start out with some things that make a good coach. From my perspective, as more of an experienced rider, I think one of the big things that makes a good coach is their ability to transfer information, right? So even if, like, there's people that will watch me ride and they will pick apart something that I'm doing that I didn't realize that I'm doing, but they'll say, hey, I noticed that the bike was doing this unloading and loading thing in the corner. Now, when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, you know what? You're right, man. I was doing that. When I'm riding it at the time, didn't notice, right? But this is also coming from a guy that was significantly slower than me, but he picked that out. So for me, one of the big things is he can see what's happening and he can relay that information to me to say, this is something that you can improve on. You know what I mean? So for me, that's one big thing that makes a good coach a good coach.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. So I think another thing too would be, as far as good coaching goes, I think another thing is their ability to kind of pick up what you're doing wrong too. So it's easy to look at a guy who's kind of going fast on a dirt bike and not be able to pick it apart so much. And I don't think that you necessarily need to be a super fast rider to pick things up either, right? I mean, there's probably guys that are like, you know, wow, he's going so fast. But then there's guys that are going, yeah, he's going fast, but he's also doing this, right? So they have to be able to identify it and they have to be able to communicate that back to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a beginner rider. You got me into riding. And one thing that I've noticed is you spent a lot of time teaching me how to do things properly. So even though I might not be able to perform that, I can pick it up when other people aren't doing it or aren't doing it.
Right.
Just because of all the time you've spent drilling it into me, like, this is where you sit, this is your seat position, this is how you should be distributing your weight on the bike, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, totally. And you know, for people that have done any coaching with me, I'll bring something up and then I'll say to them, now that I've brought this to your attention, watch for it in other people and you'll see exactly what I mean, right? So whether that's hand placement or foot placement or whatever it is, you know, they'll watch some of the other less experienced riders and they'll go, oh, okay, I get it now. I get it. That's what he was talking about. You know, it kind of gives them context. So totally understand what you're saying. Yeah. What's something else that you think makes a good coach versus a really crappy one?
So just with my experience, like I said, I am a beginner as it gets. And a coach that understands what the information that I'm trying to relay, because it's not always technical. Be like, the bike's handling funny. What am I doing? And then I kind of explain it to you, and then you're able to sit down with me and break it apart and tell me what I'm doing wrong and how I can fix that. So, yeah, just them being able to understand the information I'm trying to relay.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point too. Is being able to take the verbiage that the rider's using, because totally, if it's a newer rider, if you're a new rider and you're looking for a coach, and you say, I don't know, man, when I hit this straightaway section, the handlebars don't want to stay still, right? So that's another way of saying the front end feels nervous, or I'm getting head shake, or I'm getting these technical terms, or some of them are slang, but it's another way of voicing those concerns without really knowing that verbiage. And if you're newer to riding, then absolutely, yeah, like you're not going to know what to say to kind of get that across properly.
Yeah, I think last time we were out, I told you that the front end was biting in on the corners, and I'd kind of shake at the front, and you were able to explain why that happened, what it was, and how I fix it. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, that's a really good point. So their ability to understand the verbiage that the newer rider is using, I mean, maybe it's not even a newer rider. It could be somebody that's, a fairly good rider already, but they maybe just for whatever reason they haven't been able to use that verbiage enough to really translate that across, I guess.
Yeah,
Totally. What else? What else makes a good coach from a bad coach from your perspective?
I guess picking up on the riders, how the rider learns. So I like to see things. So I like to see someone do it, then explain it to me. If you just come up to me and explain to me and tell me what I'm supposed to do, odds are I'm going to get it wrong. It really helps for me because I'm a bit more visual to see you get after it and do what you're telling me to do. And it makes it easier for me to pick up on that.
Yeah, totally. That's another really good point too. So, I mean, everyone has different learning styles. So maybe this is a good way to kind of sum that up, would be to say, pick up on the learning style of the rider and maybe pitch the information to them in a way that they're going to get it, right? Some people you can just kind of explain stuff to and they're going to pick it up right away. And like you said, some people kind of want to see you do it and then go, oh, okay, now I've got that memory in the data bank. I see what he's talking about. I have context now. Now I know what I'm doing wrong or what I should be doing. And I'm very similar to that. I like to see what people are talking about because just the way that my mind works, if you say something, I need you to put your leg up in this corner. In my mind, I'm like, well, what do you mean leg up in the corner? Like how high? Where does it go? What are you even talking about, right? So versus actually seeing him physically do it, then I go, oh, okay, he wants it up near the radiator shroud and he wants it this high, and this is when he brings it up, this is when he puts it down. My mind likes to get these visual cues on things too.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. I remember times you coming around the corner with me and throwing your leg almost up over the handlebars just to emphasize, like, dude, get your leg up in the corners. And, seeing that, it just stuck with me that leg needs to come up.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. I think that's a really great point too. So I think on that too, for me, another thing that makes a good coach is, I'm not really sure on the wording I would use for this, but I would just say their ability to positively encourage you, I guess. So my coaching style, and I might be different from some other people out there, and people may agree or disagree, but from my personal style, what I believe is that positive encouragement gets you a lot further than some negative feedback is going to get you. So, for example, you just show someone something and then they go do the corner and they don't do it right. And you're like, hey, do it again. They come around, they don't do it right. And instead of getting frustrated and throwing your hands up in the air, you're like, just come back and go, dude, I see some improvement. Here's what I want you to try, right? It's the positive feedback versus that negative thing. And I think the negative side, there's probably a lot of, I don't know if history is the right word, but there's probably a lot of coaches out there that kind of lean on that. I mean, particularly you came from like a football background. So, I mean, are like football coaches, do they kind of beat it into you? Is that the idea?
You get a good mix of the two. A little bit of, positive praise when you do something right, but man, there's a lot of yelling. Lots and lots of yelling and telling you how you did it wrong and get it right next time or else you're on the bench. So yeah, I definitely prefer the positive feedback. And one thing that goes hand in hand with that, and something that you've demonstrated in spades, is patience. So I'll see you do something. You'll tell me how to do something. You'll remind me how to do it. I want to do it, but sometimes I just can't. So it takes reps and reps and reps for me to get it down right. So just having you there, watching me, encouraging me, helping me, rather than like, dude, you're lost cause, just throw in the towel. So just having the patience and the positive encouragement makes a world of difference.
Yeah, totally. And that's another good point too, is having the patience. So, I mean, if you have a coach that, he may know how to ride a dirt bike, but if he can't understand the information you're giving him, like say you're like, okay, well, I'm coming to this corner. I know you told me to try this, but this is what I'm finding is not helping. Or this is what I'm finding the issue is. If he can't take that information, pull it in and go, I see where he's coming from. I'm going to turn this in a way that maybe it might paint it a little bit of a different picture for him, so he picks that up and the rider will get a little better at that specific skill that we're working on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So, and then if the rider doesn't get better on that, okay, well, I need to be patient with that, but I also need to figure out how to redirect this information in a way that he might get it. So for me, Like, I don't learn a lot from reading. So, I mean, that probably sounds bad, but it's true. I can read a book, dude, and I will read the same paragraph 18 times. And that's when I know I have to set it down and be like, I am not absorbing any of this information.
Let's figure out another way to learn this.
Totally. So for me, audiobooks, I'll listen to audiobooks while I'm driving. I get that information quicker. And then even better yet for me is video. So if I want to learn something, I'll watch a video on it, the visual side of things. That for me is huge. But then I'll really go, oh, okay, I get it. So I'm a visual learner, you know? So, you know, depending on the learning style that the rider or riders, if you're doing like a big school and let's say as a rider, you decide to go in this one school. I mean, it's tough not really knowing who the guy is before you sign up. I get that. But, you know, it's just things like that to look for. Like what, you know, does he have reviews or what kind of style do you think he's going to give you? Is it going to be something that you think you're going to benefit from with your learning style? Yeah.
What are the class numbers? Because if they've got 30 people in that class, how much time does he have to give you, right?
Yeah. And so that's another good point. So a coach's ability to understand their threshold for relaying information efficiently. Does that make sense? So yeah, if he has if this guy has a class of 30 people, well, I mean, you're not going to get much info if you're one of 30 people, right? He can't watch everyone at the same time, pick every one of those people apart, and then spend the dedicated time helping them. This is what you need to do to be better.
Yeah.
Right?
I get that. So if 30 is too much, what do you think's a good number?
So for me personally, I like doing 10. 10 is a manageable number for me. I think if I go north of 10, then I'm starting to lose the ability to deal with people one-on-one and to be able to help them through whatever skill set that they need helping with, right? And obviously less than 10, there's more and more focus that I can put into each student.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and then if you're one-on-one, well then, right, it's all dedicated to that one thing, which is fantastic. Yeah. You get that really concentrated time. But so I think, you know, depending on the school and depending on the coaches and stuff, I mean, just from our experience, I mean, you've been there with me. We've done some schools where the coaches were not good.
Yeah, you could say that. And that's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's because a lot of the things that we've talked about, they either didn't do or didn't recognize, or maybe even did the complete opposite of them, right? Which is why I wanted to do this podcast, because I'm quite passionate about it, man. In my mind, dude, if you pay money to learn something from me, you're damn well going to get what you paid your money for, right? And I'm going to work as hard as I have to work and stay as late as I have to stay to make sure that you feel like you got value for that. Versus what I've seen from some other bad coaches is, I'm going to show you how cool I am. I'm going to show you how good I am on a dirt bike. And I'm going to present information to you in one way. And if you don't get it, I don't really care.
Yeah, that's something that I've seen former pro riders showing beginners what to do and just thinking like, there's no way I can do that. That's about 10 steps past the level that I'm at.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I think staying with, with what makes a good coach is this could be, we could spin this one way or the other, but with a good coach is their ability to, let's say you stick with the 10 riders or whatever class size it is that you're jumping into. The coach's ability to look at that group of people, however many that is, identify where each rider is at in their skill set, because it's not like you can open up a school and every person is going to be exactly the same talent or experience level in the whole class, right? Like that's literally non-existent. That's not going to happen. So their ability to look at each one of those 10 and go, okay, this one's here, this one's here, this one's here, and then watch them do their thing and identify where they can get better at individually, right? Because exactly, just from past experience, there was a coach that I was watching. He was trying to teach kids who can hardly even let the clutch out on their bike. That's where they're at skill-wise. First of all, I think it's badass that they're coming to do a school like that. I think that's wicked. But second of all, they're not really at the skill set yet where they're going to do doubles or they're going to do whoops or anything of the sort, right? You're still in a very basic technique frame that you need to be learning in, right? So the inability to recognize that and kind of saying, okay, well, we're going to send this double anyway, to me, that's starting to get into the really bad coaching things, or vice versa. As a good coach, their ability to recognize that and instruct that way.
Yeah, I think as a coach, you need to remember you're there for the rider. You're there to teach someone, not stroke your own ego. So similar example, seeing somebody teach some amateurs and just full send, we're going to double, we're going to triple, and there's crash after crash after crash. And it felt like the coach was there just to show everybody how good he was and wasn't coaching or teaching to the level of the riders.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that that's probably a really good segue into what makes a crappy coach. And that's obviously a big one. Their inability to see where the rider's at and teach them, like meet them where they are. And I don't mean in a physical location. I mean, meet them where they are in terms of skill level. Yeah. That to me is a sign of a bad coach. If he's trying to get you to do stuff that you may or may not be comfortable doing. And here's the thing too, I find with riders, like you may say to them, they may be working on trying to let the clutch out, right? And they may be at the point where they're like, well, if this coach tells me to send this double, I'm going to send this double, right?
Well, they're the coach. They know it's the best, right?
Totally. And that's what I'm getting at. And so as a rider, it's like, even if he's not quite there or not anywhere close to getting to that point yet, he's going to be like, well, this guy's a coach, and if he's telling me to do it, I must be able to do it, right?
Totally. And that's a relationship I've built with you from all the coaching and riding that I've done, where if you tell me to do something, I'm going to do it. And that's because we've been riding. You know my skill level. You know what I'm capable of better than I do. So if you say, hey, Rick, go hit that double, or let's hit that tabletop together, I'm going to do it. So I put a lot of trust and a lot of faith in you and your coaching and your ability.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.
Hasn't let me down yet.
Yeah, but I think that's an important distinction with coaches, right? If they're asking you to do something that you're maybe not overly confident doing yet, maybe you need a little encouragement, right? But you might also not be ready for that, and they might be putting you into a crappy spot where you might get hurt. So
totally. If this is a coach you've known for an hour, I probably wouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
Somebody you've got a relationship with, a little bit different.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. So that, for me, what makes a bad coach, that's definitely one of them. We kind of touched on it before. Another point for what makes a bad coach to me is their inability to separate ego from wanting to teach. So a good example of that is, I'm going to go out and do a couple laps as fast as I possibly can, right? Knowing everyone's watching me. And I want everyone to think I'm super awesome on a dirt bike versus, hey guys, come out and ride with me. Let's moto down a bit. I'm gonna dice it up with you or whatever. Follow me around or whatever it is, right? Versus again meeting the students back down at their level and saying, I don't need to show you how cool I am. I want to help you learn. And me going out and doing sprint laps and almost killing myself trying to show off is not going to help you.
Yeah, I get that. I'm not completely opposed to them doing a few laps, getting after it, because me seeing that just builds a little bit more confidence in their abilities, what they're capable of. And it's nice to go see them do that. And then they pull over and, okay, guys, let's slow her down. Let's do some laps together and then ride at the rider's level rather than you just still giving her.
Yeah, totally. And I definitely, I think there's a difference between like showing what their ability is, I guess, right? Because, and I get it too. Like if I'm being coached by some, I don't know, Ryan Dungey, I'm like, dude, I want you to shred this track. Like show me how this thing can be ridden, right? But then also dial it back and then come teach me. I suppose I see where you're coming from, and I agree in that if somebody, you're like, this guy knows how to shred, he gets to the track and he never does, you're also like,
totally, yeah.
Right? I mean, I would agree. You kind of want to see them mix it up a little bit. Like, let's lay down some heaters, but don't do it just for your ego.
They got to remember that they're here for the riders. It's not to stroke your own ego. It's not for you to get laps in. You're there to help these people learn to ride better, safer, faster. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, I agree. So, for me, that's a couple things that makes a bad coach too. I mean, I think a lot of it is kind of, it applies to a lot of things in life as we think of coaching, right? Their ability to communicate, their ability to kind of meet the student where they're at and get that information across. Also take in the information that the student is saying, right? Versus I'm just going to, kind of blurt this out, right? Another sign I think that you have a bad coach or coaches is if they show up to this training thing and in their mind they have it pre-programmed what you're going to learn about, and that's not going to change. So if they have it written down on a napkin, which I've literally seen before, they have it written on a napkin what the lesson is going to be, well, maybe there's not a section of the track that's applicable to that lesson. Maybe the riders aren't good enough, or they're too good for that particular lesson. Maybe there's some environmental that's not, makes that lesson not a good choice, right? So you need to be able to adapt. And some coaches are like, no, we're learning how to do A, B, and C regardless of anything else. That makes a bad coach, man. You got to be flexible.
Totally. So if I show up and a coach has the itinerary on a napkin and there's 3 points, I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to feel like I got my money's worth. But on the flip side, if I show up and it is everything scheduled out right to the minute, no flexibility, no extra time allotted to help me with something that I'm struggling with, I don't feel like I'm going to get my money's worth either. So I think there's a happy medium, a good balance that you can strike where you come prepared. People know what they're going to learn, but you're also there for the riders. And if they're good at one thing that you're teaching and not another, then you can reallocate some time and really just put the time in doing what they want to learn.
Right. So if you're a student and you're signing up for a school, like let's say you see a post about a school I'm doing and you're like, hey, I'm interested. What am I going to learn in this school? What are you looking to receive that makes you go, okay, this isn't overly detailed and this also isn't on a napkin. This to me seems good. What is that like? What does that look like?
Let me think.
Like, would it be like a couple bullet points? Like, okay, we're gonna talk about technique and then a couple bullet points, right? Mm-hmm. And then really those can kind of roll off into all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so you could do technique, position on the bike, a few bullet points there, and you might have an awesome group that's switched on and they nail that in half an hour. Well, you don't need to spend the full 2 hours. Now you can move on to the next thing. Same thing, cornering, a few bullet points about what you're going to be learning there. I think some information, just a heads up of what you're going to be learning. And I think that'd be nice to have that ahead of time too, so that you can do a little practicing on your own too.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a pretty important thing is to have, if I'm signing up for a class or a school, I want to know what the hell I'm going to be doing for the next 3 hours or 4 hours or however long that is, right? I mean, maybe some people don't really care so much about that, but for me personally, I do. So I would want to see some kind of outline, right? And again, I agree that it needs to be flexible, but I want to see a bit of an outline. This is what we're going to cover, so that when you get there, you have some idea of what's going on. Absolutely.
Like if I showed up and found out we're doing gate drops for a full morning, somebody who doesn't race, who's just out there on the weekends having fun, I'm not going to want to be doing that.
Yeah, and that's exactly it too. And that kind of ties back into what we're saying before about good coach, bad coach. Knowing what your students are doing, right? Like you can look at kids and be like, hey, this kid's a racer. I can see that he's kind of switched on. He is taking this rather seriously. You know, he might benefit from doing some gate drops or starts or whatever. And then you can look at the little girl that's on a clapped out 50. Do you really want her doing gate drops, dude? Like, you know, odds are she's bombing around the farm and her parents are just trying to make her a little bit safer. She's trying to figure out how to use the clutch. Gate drops maybe aren't the best thing for that rider. And I think that kind of goes back into being flexible with what your schedule is too, right? If you can say, okay, the majority of the kids or adults or whoever it is that you're coaching, or that the group that you're in, if the coach can say, yeah, okay, the majority don't need to do whatever starts or don't need this particular skill set, let's move on to something that I think they could all benefit from, so that, again, coming back to they get their value out of that coaching lesson. That to me is an important thing to be looking for.
Yeah, I think so. Not sure if we're going to touch on this, but
we can touch on whatever you want.
Not just what makes a good coach, but what makes a good rider. Like you're showing up to,
you mean, like a good student. You mean?
Good student. Yeah. So just thinking about that, I think first off, you probably want to sign up in the right category. If you are a brand new rider, you've got a couple hours in the seat, probably shouldn't be going to a pro level school.
Yeah. And so, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought of that, but let's definitely touch on that, because I think that's important too. What makes a good student? 100% you're right. So knowing what skill level you're at and what class you're kind of signing up for, right? So just from my own experience, I've had, I've had some kids show up that are, I mean, I get it. I get where the parents are coming from, right? They're trying to get their kids some lessons, but the kid also has zero interest in being coached or getting lessons. His parents just signed him up for it. So he does not have any attention span whatsoever. And then the other part to that is he's not at a point yet where he's ready, like age-wise maybe, or maybe skill too, but he's not at a point yet where he's ready to understand the information that's coming into him. Yeah. You know what I mean? So that kind of upsets the balance, I think, in the lessons or the class a little bit, because now you're trying to keep his attention span because all the little dude wants to go and ride his little 50, right? Yeah. All kids need to learn, but that's a good point, is that as a student, maybe as the parents signing the students up, right? Yeah. Recognizing that they might need more of a one-on-one thing. They might not be good for a class because they just might not be able to get the information that's coming at them in a group setting like that. Yeah, and kind of goes hand in hand with you being a good coach or good coaching. I've seen you before at your schools. You notice that you're losing some of the kids. It's a younger age group. They just want to get on their bikes and rip and go fast, and they don't want to do the slow speed stuff. So you'll jump on the bike, go do laps with them. They'll follow behind you, and you sneaky trick them into doing all the stuff that you taught them that day. So they're learning. They're getting some benefit from that, and they're getting to go fast. But that's a good coach, noticing his demographic, his group, and tailoring it to them. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that's a good point. What makes a good student? I think another thing is, being attentive to what the coach is trying to relay, I guess. So, I mean, and this goes for any sort of teaching or any lecture or anything, right? Like, if you're going to be there, and this is one of my peeves. So if I'm doing a presentation, I don't like it when people are talking. I don't like it when there's talking over top of me and that kind of stuff. To me, it's kind of a respect thing. Yeah. Yeah. You just want to be respectful and listen. Yeah, totally. And it's a distraction for you too. If you've got, 3 kids in the back talking, blah, 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 it's, you focus on that and may lose your train of thought or. Yeah, totally. And kids can be kids, right? I mean, they're like herding cats a lot of the time. So if you're trying to teach a big group of them something. Oh, dude, I've seen adults that are just as bad. Yeah, very true. Some are even worse. Very true. Yeah, very true. But just as a student, if you're going to do a class, do your best to listen to what's happening and try to apply. I mean, look, man, it's your money, right? You paid to be at this coaching class or whatever, so do whatever you want. But I just feel like if you're a good student, like if I paid money for this dude to teach me, I'm going to try and be as attentive as I can, right? For as long as I can. Also, with that, the caveat being the coach or coaches, they need to understand when, okay, you guys need a drink of water. Let's take 5-10 minutes. Let's shake it out. Go do a couple laps. Do whatever you want to reset, and then we're going to come back and get going again, because you will start to lose people. So the coach needs to be able to recognize that he's losing the kids or the adults or whatever. And I mean, like I said, I think that's the same in any class you would teach, right? You need to understand, read the room and understand what's happening. And so as a student, try and hang on, I guess, until that break or whatever comes. Yeah, for sure. Let's just do Mitch's random facts. What's the attention span of a human? It probably totally depends on the person, dude. Like, I know unless something I find super interesting, my mind fairly quickly goes, nah, not interested, and carries on with something else. Gotcha. So what are we talking? Ballpark 20 minutes, something like that? Well, I have heard the stat before that typically as adults anyway, we can do 18 minutes. 18 minutes we can absorb information, and then we need a break. And I can't remember how long the break was. I want to say it was like 2 minutes or 5 minutes, something like that. Not very long. Gotcha. And then another 18 minutes. If you go past, I'm pretty sure it was 18 minutes. If you go past that, then you're not absorbing all the info that you need. Gotcha. I've noticed when you're doing the schools and you're coaching, you do, I don't know, maybe 5-10 minutes of teaching, and then it's, okay, let's get on the bikes, and then you watch, and while you show them, then you watch them and coach from there. So I think that seems like a pretty good amount of time. Yeah, and I think, again, you can kind of see like dirt bikes in particular, the kids are coming there to ride a dirt bike, right? And most of the time it's their parents. For the stuff that I do, most of the time it's the parents that sign them up. So the kids just want to ride dirt bikes, right? So I think you have to kind of keep those little tidbits of information pretty short and easily digestible for the student, and then let them go out and try and practice it. And even just for me, I don't want to stand there with my bike for 2 hours while someone explains to me how to do a corner. Give me something to work on. Let me try it, right? And then if I'm still dicking it up, come back, tell me what I'm dicking up, and let me try it again. Yeah. You know, you're there to ride a dirt bike.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that. Another thing that popped into my mind about being a good student, and I know it's not always possible. Things happen. I get it. And we don't all have the same budget, but a bike that runs. Wouldn't that be nice if everybody showed up with a bike that runs?
Yeah.
I remember going to one school with you, Mitch, and watching you push start a little girl on a bike that barely ran every single time you guys got moving.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good point too. And like you said, I get it that not everyone has the budget, and
good honor for getting out there on a dirt bike. Like, first and foremost, that's awesome. That's what we want to see.
Yeah.
That's what everybody wants to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You know, it makes the time you spend push starting someone else's bike is time taken away from everybody else. Yeah,
totally. Yeah. And that's a really good point too. You know, if it's anything within your power, you know, I mean, if your bike suddenly starts acting up, then we'll try and work through it. Right. Yeah. But you know, if you're coming into it knowing this thing hardly runs and I'm going to need a bunch of help to get it going every single time we stop, maybe not the best.
Yeah. And if you are going to show up with that bike, just give the coach a heads up.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. That's a good point too. Yeah. Yeah, man. So I think that's some good and some bad. What makes a good coach, what makes a bad coach, as far as like, I mean, whether that's one-on-one lessons or if you're getting into some sort of school or anything, that's crappy, right? So yeah. We're talking about good coaches, bad coaches. I mean, I don't know, man. Maybe the facility has some input to that too, right? Like, I've never had a place say no to me because they understand the benefit of it. I'm helping your local riders get better, and that means they're going to have more fun at your facility. They're going to keep coming back, and I'm attracting people to it that probably have never been there, right?
Oh, absolutely. How many schools did you do last year for free just to help out the community?
All of them.
Who else is doing that?
Yeah.
Who else has done that?
Yeah, exactly.
Free.
Yeah. So, yeah, dude, I was beside myself. I literally read the email. Well, read the word. I literally read the word like at least 5 or 6 times. I'm not making it up. Cause I like looked down further into the email body, you know, from the reply or whatever. And I'm like, where's the rest of it? And I was legitimately confused for a few minutes. Cause I'm like, there's no way they just said no and had nothing else on this email. No, that is exactly what that was. It just said no.
Jeez, that's terrible.
Yeah. That's pretty low end, but it did make me think of one other thing I think that we can chat about, which is, you know, good coach, bad coach. You know, we talked about just because you're a really, really good rider doesn't mean you're going to be a good coach.
Agreed. Yeah.
Right. I think we've established that.
And there's some people who are terrible riders that are probably really good coaches.
Bingo, which is what exactly my next point is. So I had this one rider come up to me, and she was like, it's a female. She's a badass on a bike. Mm-hmm. Like as far as female riders go, and I'm not trying to say, you know, she's good, but you know what I'm getting at, right? Like for a female rider, she's fast, she's good, she's talented on the bike, she's a pro level female. And I remember encouraging her. I'm like, look, you should be doing some lessons. You should be doing some schools. I think people would be down for that. You have a great personality. Mm-hmm. You know, you're super passionate about this sport. You're super positive. I think you should be doing more coaching. I think a lot of people could benefit from that. Yeah. And her response to that was, yeah, but I'm not the number one person out there. Like I'm not the fastest girl in the area or in Canada or anything. So who am I to do any sort of lessons or anything? And I think that that's a really important thing to talk about because
you don't need to be the best. Like someone like that, I'm sure there's so much I could learn from her.
Right.
Like that's somebody on the track who's probably going to lap me consistently and just has this wealth of knowledge because she's a pro level rider.
Yeah.
So there's tons of stuff that she could teach me.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. And I know for me personally, before I started doing all this, I had similar thoughts about that. I'm like, well, I really want to do it. I'm really passionate about it. I really like teaching people. But I'm not an Eli Tomac. I'm not a Chase Sexton. I'm not any one of these dudes who anybody even knows about. I'm just a guy out at the local track that loves riding dirt bikes and can get around the track fairly well, right? Yeah. Let's be honest. If I go down to some big race in California, I'm going to get smoked. I'm not a super fast guy. But what I realized was these super, quote unquote, super fast guys, they aren't doing the coaching, dude. So if they aren't doing the coaching, somebody has to offer some coaching.
So it falls to people like you.
Exactly, right? And there's, you don't, like we talked about, you don't need to be the super fastest person to do that. That's totally fine. Mm-hmm. You just have to have all those things that we talked about that makes a good coach. So I really encouraged this female rider, and I said, I explained that to her, basically my story. And I said, I was the same way, but here's where I fell on it. This is what I thought. Yeah, I may not be this guy or this guy or this guy, but here's the thing, they're not doing it. And so somebody has to put something out there to help people, right? And that's really what you're doing it for. Obviously, you're not going to be doing it for the money. You're doing it because you're passionate about it and you want to help people, get better at this thing that you like so much. So I just feel like that's an important thing. If people are out there and they're saying, maybe I want to get into doing some coaching, really look at what we talked about makes a good coach and a bad coach, and recognize where you're at with those, right? And and that's the other thing too. On the flip side of that, I've very, very recently seen some people coaching that are not good at it. Like, I'm talking just this week. I watched them coach, and albeit it was different from my style, but I feel like they weren't mature enough or ready enough to be really effective at it, if that makes sense. So yeah. So as much as I say, hey, if no one else is doing it, you should do it too, I do say that with a caveat of saying, and I'm kind of contradicting myself here, but saying maybe it's not for everybody. So understand that just because you can ride a dirt bike, or maybe you can't, or whatever, doesn't necessarily mean that you should be doing it either. Yeah. So I know that that's completely opposite of what I just said, but it's just something I thought of because I was watching this fella, and I was just thinking to myself, I literally just rode away because I'm like, I don't want any part of this, man. This is kind of a disaster waiting to happen. Yeah. And what am I going to do? We'll go up to the guy and be like, dude, you need to stop. Like, totally. Yeah. We're adults, right?
I think the onus is on the coach that they need to realize, hey, you know what? I'm self-aware. I'm not great at this. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree with that. Yeah.
You need some integrity with the coaches for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man. So for me, that's what makes a good coach, bad coach. Mm-hmm. Some things to look out for. If you are thinking about getting into it, look at the things that we talked about. And this is from my own experience doing coaching. Look, I'm not perfect. There's things that I can get better at, and I'm trying really hard to do that as I go. And there's things that every time I go and coach, either whether it's one-on-one or I do a school, I learn more and more about, how do I word this? Teaching different human beings. Like, everybody's so different. Yeah. Did you really have to hone into what makes that person tick the best you can with that short interaction you're going to have with them? Mm-hmm. And try and find a way that you can best deliver that info. So like I said, I'm not perfect at it. I'm still learning. But I think if you're looking at doing it, you need to get really good at that.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. So I imagine we've missed a whole bunch. Is there somewhere that people can email you, contact you, let you know what they want in a coach, what they're looking for, maybe ask you some questions about the coaching?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a really good point that Rick had. If there is some questions about coaching or about riding or about the schools or anything, if you have any question whatsoever, it doesn't even have to be about anything on this podcast. You definitely can email me, Mitch@Fit4Moto.com. It's FITFOURMOTO.com. That's the email. Or DM me on Instagram. It's just Fit4Moto, FIT, the number 4, and then MOTO on Instagram. That's where you can find us. We got Facebook. Check out the website, just Fit4Moto.com. We have, you can contact us on there. I mean, there's a ton of ways to reach out to us if you have any questions about any of that at all. Maybe find out where we're going to put on another school. Yeah. So anyway, if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We'll get back to you right away. And look, man, thanks for listening to the podcast, dude. We have a ton of fun doing these. Thank you for joining me as my co-host.
Hey, thanks. This was awesome.
Yeah, dude, I'm looking forward to the next one. So that's episode 3, coaching, good, bad, the ugly, or whatever it's worth. That's my opinion. That's your opinion, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's it, man. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching this. If it's on YouTube, make sure you head over to the Patreon. Check out the Patreon. So here's the thing with the Patreon too. There's 3 different levels: beginner, intermediate, pro. It's a corny because dirt biking. But yeah, man, if you sign up for the Patreon, you're going to help support the channel. You're going to help support the podcast. You're going to help me keep this whole moto thing going, which is really, really cool. And with the Patreon, there's different levels, like I said. And with each level, you get different cool access to me personally. So you get one-on-one stuff. You can message me directly. On and on it goes. So if you go over to our website, Fit4Moto.com, go to the members area. It directs you right over to the Patreon and then gets you hooked up, man.
Awesome.
Yeah. Deadly. Okay, that's it. Episode 3. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys in the next episode.
Thanks for listening. Bye, everybody.
Gonna hit the crickets just for good measure. We didn't use this.
Oh. Because I've got stubby arms. It's too far away. Can't reach it.
I like it. Awesome. All right.